Kat Von D opens up about the different ways some Christians have been reacting to her public profession and ultimately getting to the crux of this tension between should Christians conform to a cultural Christian norm when it comes to things like aesthetic and dressing, or can we remain ourselves into the different things that we're into, whether it's music or fashion, and still follow Jesus? This channel exists to encourage, empower, inspire you to live a life that blesses God. If you're not new here, please consider subscribing. All right, now let's get into the rest of the video.
How do you get there? Like, how do you get, because I think a lot of people are lost. I feel lost a lot of times, you know? I think a lot of us feel that way. And so how do you feel like you solved, like you're lost?
So he's asking her about getting baptized, which I appreciate Theo Von. He's a comedian. He's been on Rogan. Appreciate him opening up and saying that he feels lost sometimes, right?
I was brought up with Christianity in my childhood, and then I strayed. And so like in a nutshell, I just kind of in the last 5 years have like made my way back and have a different understanding than maybe when I was a kid. Because I think when you're a kid, you're like, or at least for me, it was like, we just go to church because that's what we have to do. I didn't have actual profound questions that I want answered like I do now. And so I think as an adult, you get to have a different understanding of that. And so that's kind of what, you know, how I in a weird artsy way just kind of came back. And I just, the last 5 years have just been studying the Bible, and now like at this church, like we have our women's Bible study and stuff that I attend. And
Kat Von D is plugged into a church. She's baptized. She's going to a women's Bible study. A lot of the people that watch this channel don't go to a Bible study. I'll be honest with y'all. You guys aren't plugged into a local church. You're not going to a Bible study. She, as a new convert, let's just be honest for a minute and give her flowers. She's doing a lot of the things that a lot of us should be doing, and we're not. Yet, she keeps getting backlash by some Christians.
And, you know, I think I'm going to always have questions and continue to want to learn and have deeper understandings of things. And so, but in that podcast that you probably watched, like I talk about like a little bit what you said. It's like we're trying to find meaning or want to feel again, you know, and I think there's a lot of temporary fixes or, you know, like, you know, I used to, like, I was an addict, and you know, I'll have 17 years sober in July.
Wow.
And
17 years sober in July. Props to her. That's great.
So, you know, I feel like those are all things that kind of like lead you in that direction.
Yeah.
And it's such an intimate and personal thing. Like my relationship with God is my own, and I've never really felt like I belonged anywhere. Like, especially now, I think like being public with my faith puts you into like this microscopic critical tank, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So I get criticized from all sides now.
My understanding is that she's been going to church for quite a while. She placed her faith in Jesus a couple years ago in terms of coming back to the Lord. And she says when you go public with your faith, you get criticized from all angles. This is the thing. As someone that's been a Christian musician, as someone that's been on YouTube for a couple years, believe it or not, from 2015, when I first started uploading vlogs, to 2019, I really didn't want to share my faith much on YouTube because I know that how critical Christians could be. So what she's talking about, like I had been serving in church and working at a church and all these different things. So for her to say, look, it took a while for me to open up about my faith. And I would relate to that. It took me a while to start talking about Jesus on my channel. Go back and watch my vlogs from 2018, 2019. I didn't talk about faith until around 2020-ish, end of 2019, 2020-ish, right? So I think it's very interesting that so many folks who are privately Christian have this like, I don't know if I want to put myself out there all the way because I know of the ramifications, you know?
Which I don't care because at the end of the day, I'm you know, my relationship's with God, not you, but
right.
But it is interesting. I feel like now it just becomes funny, like some of the comments I get.
Yeah.
I think because people have a hard time understanding the aesthetic and pairing that with something, which
your
is
aesthetic, you mean?
Yeah,
right. The ambiance of you and then pairing it
in Christianity, and it's so silly to me. And like I don't understand how people don't see how close-minded that is, you know, and how like why would you think that you have to look a certain way to have an understanding of the Bible, you know?
Man, I relate to this in so many ways. I'm gonna come back to how I relate to this, but I'm gonna let Kat cook. Just give me a second, because you'd be shocked how touchy this is for me.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I think it's a lot of that. There's a lot of interesting stuff there, you know.
Yeah, but like I do, but I mean,
there's a lot to think about in all of this.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
like one time I went to like a Jordan Peterson lecture, and my husband and I were like the only people that looked like us there. And I don't want to diss on like Jordan's fan base, but I feel like everybody had their own uniform, you know, like there was just rows of people in front of me and they all kind of dressed the same.
Really, yeah.
I was just at Jordan Peterson's event in London, the art conference, and she's 100% right. Me and my buddy Neil were like the only ones in there not in the shirt and tie. They are so uniformed. It's spooky. Everyone is like business professional at these Jordan Peterson events.
And I was like, man, for people, and I'm not judging or criticizing, but you would think that like free thinkers would, or maybe they just don't care. I don't know. Like, so the church I go to is like a really small church, and there's not enough people to have a running trend or anything like that. But when I went to like a big church in California recently, I looked around, and it's like a lot of people have the same style, and so I realized that maybe because like modern day Christians are so used to being surrounded by people that look the same as them. When someone like me comes into the mix, it's like, oh wait, this is demonic, or this is because I get called demonic a lot, or this is like, you know, you're serving two masters, and I'm like, I don't think any of that is accurate, you know.
So first of all, I think she's spot on. Listen, I got a lot of critique of my home state of California. But one thing you can't criticize is that, and you guys are going to not like this, there is a diversity here that isn't always present in other pockets, meaning that you can go to a church, and in many churches, you will see people of all socioeconomic backgrounds, because that's a lot of Southern California. You will see people of different ethnicities. You will see people of different aesthetics. You will see people of all over the spectrum, right? And I don't know if that's a uniquely Californian thing or a uniquely coastal city thing versus rural thing. I'm glad that she saw that out here. You know what I mean? I'm glad that she saw that out here. So that is something that's very prevalent. If she were to go to my church, she would see that too, right? She would see people with different ethnicities. She would see people of different ages. She would see people with different socioeconomic backgrounds. She'd see surfers, skaters, normies, families, people with their shirt tucked in, people with piercings, people with tattoos, covered in tattoos. She would see that, so I'm glad that she got to experience that.
I don't think you have to, there's no dress code to be a Christian.
Yeah.
There's like,
that's baffling to me.
Yeah. But I get it a lot. Like I just recently posted my last post was just, I thought it was like a very cool, like modest image of me, like in a dress and some funny shoes. And
okay, now I'm personally not like, I don't know, I don't want to disrespect her aesthetic, because I don't know if this is like goth, but I think aesthetically, I think this is fly. And I just because I wouldn't wear something, or I don't, it's not something that like I'm personally into, I could still look at it. Is emo, is that what it's called? I can look at that and be like, yo, the little witch shoes or whatever these, you know, I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to be derogatory, but like all of this is super dope. Like to me, right? Godly goth. She said godly goth. Goth spell. She's into gothic metal style. I think this is dope. Like I think the color scheme, the contrast, the shoes. I think this is dope. Now, I'm personally not like necessarily gonna dress like this. I got a couple leather jackets and stuff like that, right? But she could pull it off, and I think it's super fly. I think it's dope. And even she's not like immodest with the dress. Like I think it's dope. So the question is, as someone grows in sanctification, should they be growing into a cultural change in the sense of not their behavior, but in the sense of their external appearance and their cultural connections? So I'm going to come back to that. So just wait a second, and I'm going to drive this home for me.
The comments are just hilarious. It's just
people like Satan's going to bring you home, and just things like, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's sad.
Yeah,
I guess there's all levels of everything. Like even if you get into like the Christian, like if you like
I thought I was gonna get hate from my existing fans, you know, like just people who are
Like feel like you could be a deserter or something, or maybe people that are fans of yours that don't have a religion or aren't Christians or something, that they would have a thought about it.
And no, they've been super loving and open-minded, and I
think it's so interesting that oftentimes non-Christians could be more open to someone coming to the conclusions of Jesus than Christians. Like, that is so backwards and asinine to me.
That, you know, but it's been the other side that I was just so surprised. But
wow. Yeah, you know, it's like, I think there's a lot of like interesting stigmas with Christianity, I guess.
Christianity from its jump, if you read the book of Acts, has always been a movement that was referred to as the way, that, believe it or not, grafted in outsiders. We read these things and we read the parable of the Samaritan. We don't understand any of the context of what Jesus was talking about in the parables. The parable of the Samaritan is him talking about people that the Jews despised because they thought they were culturally superior. And Jesus says, who was a neighbor? It was the Samaritan who cared for the person that was robbed. Radical conclusions in that parable, the parable of the Good Samaritan, right? Because the Levite and the priest passed by the man that was robbed, yet the Samaritan stopped. The person they thought was outside and wasn't a Jew, that's the person who Jesus said was a neighbor, and you are to love your neighbor the way, love your neighbor as yourself. Who's my neighbor? The Samaritan. Huge. The woman at the well, Samaritan. Huge. These are huge. And then you get into Acts, and you see the movement expand beyond the Jews, and now the Gentiles are getting saved. The non-Jews are getting saved. So what do you think that did? That created a whole rift of the Judaizers versus Paul, and even Peter catching shots from Paul in the book of Galatians. And the whole book of Galatians is saying, hey, you don't have to conform to external modifications to prove an internal conversion of the heart. What was the debate? The debate was these Gentile Christians getting saved and the Judaizers telling them they have to get circumcised. And Paul is like, listen, if you're going to go out the window and get circumcised after Jesus already died on the cross for that, you might as well go all the way and just chop your junk off. This is in the book of Galatians. This is all throughout the New Testament. This tension is all throughout the New Testament. So what I find interesting is that we're still dealing with this, is that someone can come to faith, and yet some segment of people will say, you have to change different. You know what the crux of it is? You have to assimilate. You have to assimilate. And we're not talking about sin, right? We're not talking about sin, because dressing like this is not sinful. It's not immodest. It's not sinful. Having tattoos is not sinful. And by the way, where's that line? Well, she's getting all of her tattoos from her past life blacked out because she said that those don't represent her anymore. So the areas that she's like, these don't represent me anymore, it's not like she's not conscious of her external appearance. She's saying, I've had tattoos that I got once upon a time when I was on some foolishness, and those tattoos I covered up because they don't represent me anymore. So she's not like oblivious to it. She's getting stuff blacked out, and then she's going to add some color over it. She talks about that later on in this interview. Yet she's like, but I still am going to, wear the black lipstick. the black lipstick or the bright red lipstick, and the contrasty aesthetic, and these elements are in and of themselves not evil or sinful. The reason why I resonate with this, and I'm going to get slightly vulnerable, and I'm sure somebody will leave me a nasty comment about this, is I grew up as an Armenian refugee in an all-black neighborhood. I'm not sure if you guys know this. We had an apartment complex, and everyone in my apartment complex was black except me and my mom, and it was another refugee family. So I grew up immersed in hip-hop music, in hip-hop culture. I got arrested. I got in trouble. And I've always made hip-hop music, and I've always came from black and brown communities. That's all I've ever known. And so, like, as I'm now on YouTube, I still, till this day, get crap about why do you talk that way? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? Why do you guys do this with your merch? Why is right? Till this day, I still get these sorts of things. Right? And so no one is immune to these sort of cultural expectations. But if we're looking at the scriptures, not when it comes to sin, but when it comes to cultural identity, we see a consistent move towards God, accommodating people from different cultures and not making them assimilate to a quote unquote normative culture. You can't listen to that style of music. You can't dress that way. That was a lot of it for me when I got saved. When I got saved, hip hop wasn't mainstream culture. So the way all the kids are dressing now with the baggy clothes and the streetwear, like what's normative culture now? Skater influence, baggy clothes, Nikes, Dunks. Only people that dressed like that in the early 2000s were people that were black or were into hip hop or played basketball. And I wasn't black, but I played basketball. All my friends were black, right? And so like I was the first kid at my school with a pair of Air Force Ones. I was the first kid at my school with some Timberlands. I was the first kid at my school, right? And so when I got saved, it was this similar like, you got to start wearing tighter clothes. What? Why? You got to start dressing this way. You can't listen to this genre of music anymore. It's really weird that like in Christianity, which should be the most accommodating and should be the most welcoming community. Why? Because our example of our God is literally someone that steps off of his throne and steps into our world and into our mess and redeems us. That's the whole gospel narrative, right? That's the whole gospel narrative is God steps into human history. Yet we tell people that you have to step into our method and our way and our genre of music and our preferences and our aesthetic and the way we dress. It's asinine and backwards. It's just weird. Like it's just weird that like that's the type of comments she gets over stuff that like, yes, fashion is going to be a matter of opinion. This is this isn't something that like my wife would ever wear, but I'm like, yo, that's fly. That's dope. I'm sick. Rock out, sis. If you come to my church, you're going to see skaters. You're going to see moms. You're going to see older folks, right? You're going to see folks with dreadlocks. You're going to see everything. That's good. That's good. Because imagine if the world, which naturally kind of creates these boundaries around conservative and liberal, around goth and hip hop and rap, around skater and surfer and whatever these lines we draw. But yet, when the world looks at the church, they go, wait a minute, there's an interesting dynamic here. I would have never thought this person would be close to this person based on the superficial preconceived notions I had. Yet they're tight and they're close, and there's community, and it's not what I would have expected, right? So I just don't like this like, let's make people conform to whatever our normative method is with style, with dressing, with language. Just to be clear, I'm not talking about sinful things. I would like to hear from you guys about this though, because I'm really, I'm just bummed that she's catching that kind of stuff. It's like, who are these people, and why are they so weird? I mean, to me, it's like, on here it could be about like tattoos. Like I posted my picture just a second ago, my dog bite early in a stream, right? I told you guys a story about the dog bite. And someone was like, did you get your tattoos before you were a Christian? No, I got all my tattoos after I was a Christian. And I'm going to get more tattoos. I'm not going to get no face tattoos or neck tattoos or anything crazy. But I'd like to finish my sleeve on my right arm. And then you sit down and have a Bible study with them. And then you realize, oh, this is not about the Bible. It's not about God. It's about what you feel comfortable with. We see according to the Bible that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when he answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used from my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.